Algebra 2, not Algebra 2, sorry. Hello, College Algebra, and welcome to the lesson over the 2.1 Cartesian coordinate system. And actually, to you guys, that's just the XY axis. It's actually going to be a pretty easy lesson. Some things you already know about the XY axis is, well, your X coordinates are on the horizontal line, your Y points are on the vertical, and you have an origin, 0, 0 in the middle. What you may not know is that the four sections of the XY axis are called quadrants. Quadrant 1, Quadrant 2, Quadrant 3, and Quadrant 4. And just want to make sure that you understand that these quadrants go in a counterclockwise direction. Meaning quadrant 1 starts here, and then you have to go counterclockwise to quadrant 2. Some students do the other way around, which is actually incorrect. So make sure, if you're asked to find out what quadrant a point is in, you know that the first quadrant starts here, and then the quadrant 2 is the one in the upper left. And then just keep going counterclockwise from there for quadrant 3 and quadrant 4. As long as you understand that, those problems will be a piece of cake. And something else you might want to know is that on the online homework, there's going to be a case where you're going to be given 4 points, and it's going to ask you to plot them on the XY axis. So the point 6, 3, that means you would go to the right 6 and then up 3, and that would be the point 6, 3. You do the same thing for the next one, negative 5, 4. The negative 5 means you're going to go to the left, negative 5, and then the positive 4 means you're going to go up 4 units, and that'd be the point negative 5, 4. Again, this is easy stuff for you guys. You've been doing this since grade school. I'll go ahead and do the last 2 points real quick. Negative 1, negative 2 is right here. And then the point 1, negative 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. There you go. Easy points on the online homework. You can do this in your sleep. Easy peasy. Moving on. Now let's say you're given an equation, 12x minus 8y equals 16. And then let's say you're given a chart where it gives you some y values and it gives you some x values. But then for the other spots in the chart, they're left blank. And what you have to do is fill in the blank. Like, for example, in the first part, what if y is 0? What would x be? And the way to find out what x would be is you would go ahead and take the equation. And in this case, you know that y is 0, so why don't you go ahead and plug in 0 for y and see what happens. So then 12x minus 8 times 0 equals 16. But as you guys know, negative 8 times 0, that just becomes 0. So then you get 12x minus 0 equals 16. But you guys know that 0 is not really important at this time. So you just do 12x equals 16 and solve. Then from here, just divide by 12, and you'll get x equals 16 over 12. But that fraction can be reduced. Both top and bottom are divisible by 4, which means your actual answer should be 4 over 3. So for that question mark, when y is 0, you'll write x is supposed to be equal to 4/3. And if you look at the orange graph down below, I already have the answers put in for you. You can do this on your own time if you wanted to check. We'll do one more on this one, and then we'll move on. So now let's say, sorry about that. Now say moving on to the second row, now we have that x is 0, and we need to find out what y will be. So again, take the same equation, and this time we're going to take 0, plug it in for x, and go from there. So you get 12 times 0 minus 8y equals 16. And 12 times 0 is indeed 0. 0 minus 8y equals 16. 0 is not important anymore, so you just have negative 8y equals 16. And then you just solve for y. Just go ahead and divide by negative 8, and you'll get that y is negative 2. So then here in the chart, you would type in negative 2, and there you go. And if you double check, sure enough, y does equal negative 2 in the orange chart. So long story short, whatever you see here, plug and chug into the equation, and it'll help you find the other value. That's all it is. It's a plug and chug problem. And just a heads up, you will get fractions for your answers. So be careful with your fractions and make sure to reduce to lowest terms, like the 4/3. We had to reduce 16 over 12 to 4/3. It will count it wrong if you don't reduce it. So just keep that in mind, plug and chug, reduce fractions to lowest terms, and these charts should be a piece of cake. I got one more chart to show you, and then we'll move on. So now let's say we have this equation, x equals y squared, and now I have this red chart that I need to fill in the blanks. And I'm not going to do all of these. I'm going to do 64 for x, and then these two for y. I'm going to first do the 64. So in other words, what if x is 64? So 64 equals y squared. Now I need to find my y. But now to solve for y and get it by itself, I have to get rid of this power of 2. And just a heads up, if you guys remember, the way to get rid of that power of 2 is to take the square root. But here's the catch on taking the square root. You're going to have to take your 64 and give it plus or minus. So now that you've taken the square root on this side, the power of 2 is gone, and all you have is y. On the left side, you'll have plus or minus, and then the square root of 64 will simplify to 8. So in other words, you have two answers for y, that it is equal to negative 8 or positive 8. And just so you know, you don't have to enter both of those answers. You just have to enter one into the Hawks program. So in other words, say you found both answers, just go ahead and type in negative 8. You'll get it right. But just a heads up on that. So that one we got. Now I want to plug in 2 square root of 2 in for y. And let's see what happens. So x equals, and when we plug in y, we're going to plug in 2 square root of 2. And I'll make that all squared. Now when we solve this, here's the crucial thing you have to remember. When you solve this, make sure the squared goes to both parts, meaning the 2 in front gets the squared, and then the square root of 2 gets this power. And then you have to simplify both parts that way. So 2 squared will become 4, and then square root of 2 squared, that's just the same thing as square root of 2 times itself, which is going to be square root of 4. But then if you simplify that, you know the square root of 4 is a perfect root, which becomes 2. So then, just got to do 4 times 2, and voila, your answer is 8. So in other words, you'll plug in 8 for the x part, and sure enough, that is the correct answer. So just remember, distribute that power to both parts. If you don't, you will get it wrong. And now one more example to show you, and then we'll move on. Now what if we plug in negative root 3? Plug that in for y, solve for x. Sorry. Now, as you guys know, when you square something, it's the same thing as taking negative root 3 times itself. So in other words, you're taking a negative times a negative. which, as you guys know, a negative times a negative is a positive. But then if you multiply the two roots, root 3 times root 3 is root 9, which then just simplifies. Root 9 is just positive 3. So positive 3 would be the answer for that. Not negative, positive 3. So please be careful with those type of problems, especially when you have negatives. When you square something, the negative should make it positive. And with that said, again, these are just basic plug and chug problems. The rest you can easily do on your own. And I think we're good to go and move on to other things. So, the distance formula might be something you've been introduced to in the past. But basically, say you have 2 points and you want to find out how far away they are from each other. That's how you use the distance formula to find out, well, how far away the 2 points are from each other. And the way it works is, say you're given 2 points. The first point, take the x and the y and label them as x1, y1. Then take the second point, label it x2, y2. And then once you've done that, you can then fill them into the formula and then just compute. So let's go ahead and do that. So the distance formula is going to be the square root of x squared minus x, or x of 2 minus x of 1 all squared, where my x of 2, if you look over here, is 0, and then minus x of 1, which is negative 2. Then plus y sub 2 minus y sub 1. The y sub 2 is 5, and then minus y sub 1, which is going to be negative 7. And then let's simplify from there. Again, we're still finding distance. So if we do 0 minus a negative 2, that becomes plus positive. So 0 plus 2 just becomes 2 squared. And then plus, take care of the next parentheses, 5 minus a negative makes that plus positive. And then 5 plus 7 becomes 12. But that is still squared. So then simplify the squares. 2 squared will give you 4. The 12 squared will give you 144. And then just add those together. You'll have that the distance is equal to the square root of 148. And with that, we are 95% done. Basically, we have our answer right here. But the thing is, the Hawks program will want us to simplify. Meaning, if possible, I need to try and break these up into 2 separate roots and simplify. And since we have a square root, I probably should make a list of my squares to see which one could potentially help. So 1 squared 1, 2 squared is 4, 3 squared is 9, 4 squared is 16, 5 squared is 25. And after some experimenting, you'll realize that 4 can help us out. Because 4 times 37 does turn out to equal 148. So this is how you would split it up. And then simplify from there. Square root of 4 is 2. And the square root of 37 turns out to be a prime number. So you actually can't break that down anymore. So then for your final answer, your distance would be 2 times the square root of 37. So crucial thing, this is not just a plug and chug formula. Once you get down to this part, see if you can split it like we did here to simplify your answer. And if you can't break it down, that's okay. But if you can, do it. And just if you're asking yourself, yes, this is the answer you put into the Hawks program. 2 square root 37. Now let's just try another one of these so we get familiar with the distance formula. So again, same formula. I'm going to take 1 point, label it x1 and y1, take a second point, label it x2 and y2. And then I'm going to plug in those values into the distance formula. So again, square root. We're going to have x of 2 minus x of 1 in this parentheses, where x of 2 is right here, and then minus x of 1. So negative 9 minus 5. And then plus, I'm going to do y sub 2 minus y sub 1, so y sub 2 right here, minus y sub 1 right here, negative 9. And then with that, we can go ahead and compute. So in the first parentheses, I have negative 9 minus 5, which turns out to be negative 14 squared. And then 10 minus a negative becomes plus positive, which will make that 19 squared. Simplify from there. Give me a second. So now I gotta do 14 squared, which should give you 196. And then 19 squared is going to be 361. Then just add those two numbers together, and you should get the square root of 557. But of course, make sure if it can split up or not. And I'll let you know ahead of time. No matter how hard you try for this one, like if you make the list of perfect roots and you keep trying them, you will eventually find out that this example is actually a prime number. So in other words, we can't break it down. So then with that said, this is as best as it gets. And this is what you're going to put into the Hawks program. So sometimes you can split it up like this. Sometimes you cannot. It's up to you to determine when you can and when you can't. And that's how you use the distance formula to find the distance between 2 points. And we'll be using that later on in today's lesson, so please keep that formula handy. But moving on to a much easier formula, the midpoint formula. And basically what the midpoint formula does is, let's say you have 2 points, and let's say you want to find the point that's right in the middle. That is the midpoint. And this is the formula you use to compute it. And it's actually really easy. So like say for example, I have these 2 points. And just like last time, I'm going to take the first point, label it x1 and y1. Then for the second point, I'll label it x2, y2. And then just use those in the formula. And I do want to make one crucial thing here. Since this is actually a point, your answer needs to be in parentheses. Make sure you have that. So following the formula, I got to do x1 plus x2. My x1 is right here, and my x2 is right here. So in other words, I got to do 5 plus negative 9, and then just divide that by 2. And then for the second part, I got to do y sub 1 plus y sub 2. My y sub 1 is negative 9, and my y sub 2 is 10. All right, we got all the numbers plugged in. Now we can simplify. For the first part, 5 plus negative 9 is going to be negative 4, all divided by 2. The second part, negative 9 plus 10, will give us 1 over 2. And then if we can reduce anything, we can. The negative 4 divided by 2 becomes negative 2, and the 1/2 will stay as it is. So yes, you can get fractions as part of your midpoint answer. Do not be afraid of that. That is possible. And then that's what you would do. You would type in the parentheses, and then -2, comma, 1/2. And then that's it. Very, very easy. Easy points. Moving on to some other stuff. Now, for this example, consider the following 3 points. There's 2 steps we're going to have to do. Step 1, with these 3 points, determine if the given points form a right triangle, and if it is not, determine if it is isosceles or scalene. Now, if you're a little rusty on your geometry vocabulary, a right triangle is a triangle that has a 90-degree angle, like you see here. An isosceles, or I'm just going to put isos, is a triangle that is symmetrical, where it has congruent angles and congruent sides. But more importantly, just make sure that you remember isosceles is symmetric. Scalene is a triangle that is neither right nor isosceles. It's just a triangle that doesn't have any congruent angles or sides. Just a very awkward triangle. So that's our objective. We want to determine if these 3 points will form a right, isosceles, or scalene triangle. And then step 2, if our triangle is right or isosceles, then we want to find the area. And just a heads up, if you don't remember the area of a triangle, it's 1/2 times base times height. So that's a formula we're going to use for step 2. Now, in terms of solving this problem, the Hawks program wants you to use a very convoluted equation and procedure to solve these 2 problems. And I found out, or I decided for myself, it would be so much faster and so much easier to answer these 2 questions if we just used a graph. So for example, let's say for step 1, I need to find out if my triangle is right, isosceles, or scalene. Well, what if I just plot the points and see what my triangle looks like? So like here, I'm going to plot -2, 6. -1, -2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Then let's plot the next one, -6, -9, which should put me here, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, right here. And then the last point, -6, 6. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 for -6, then up 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, I have my 3 points. Now let's connect them and see what our triangle looks like. Okay, I got straight. Then I'm going to go straight down for here. Then I got to connect the dot for this one. Okay, so now take a look at our triangle. And if you look closely in the upper left corner, we have a 90-degree angle, which should scream to you that this is a right triangle. Ding, 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 you win a prize. Boom, boom. Easy peasy. Now step 2 is we need to find the area, where we got to take 1/2 times the base times the height. Now we may not be given the numbers for the base and the height, but we can easily deduce. Like for example, this side of the triangle should represent your height. But let's count how many units that is. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. In other words, the height is 15 units. And then that should make this the base. And the base is 1, 2, 3, 4 units. So there you go. Your base is 4 units. Your height is 15. Now you can just plug and chug to solve. So you'll have 1/2 times, well, if you do 4 times 15, that's 60. Then just half of 160, boom. your area of the triangle is going to be 30 units. Done. So easy. Trust me, this is 10 times faster than what the Hawks program wanted you to do. And personally, this makes a lot more sense. Now let's try another one similar to that, where this time we're given 3 new points. And again, we got to ask ourselves, does this make a right triangle, isosceles, or scalene? And then step 2, we need to find the area again, using 1/2 times base times height. So let's try it. Again, step 1, I need to figure out what type of triangle it is, isosceles, right, or scalene. And we'll do that by drawing some points. First, let's do 0, -2. 0, 1, 2. So that's the first point. Then let's do -5, 4. -1, -2, -3, -4, -5. And then 1, 2, 3, 4. And then the last point, 5, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. Now let's connect the dots. There you go, that one. Let's connect that one. And let's connect this one.